Hello? Hello, hello? I don't know why you say goodbye, I say hello. Pardon?
please. Let me know when it's on. Okay, good afternoon, members. You're all very welcome to the February Plan and Regulatory Services Committee. We just get straight into it. Item number 1, apologies. Are there any apologies from the floor? I have none here with me. Okay, don't see any lights on, so move on to item 2, declarations of interest. Any declarations of interest, so we'll just take them as we go. Not seeing any lights on or hands up. Okay, members, we're on to agenda item 3, report from the head of planning. So we'll go on to 3.1, decision item relating to plan guidance note, temporary structures and changes of use. I'm going to hand over to, is it Damien to present this item? Oh, sorry, Roisin. Join us by Zoom. Go ahead, Roisin.
Thank you, Chair. As you will recall, in July 2020, members agreed to approve a planning guidance note for businesses and other organisations in relation to the erection of temporary structures and the undertaking of temporary changes of use to help deal with the challenges presented by the COVID-19 pandemic. The guidance note sets out the Council's approach to the provision of temporary structures and temporary changes of use and proposed that these should be permitted without the need for planning permission for up to 6 months initially in certain circumstances. In January 21, members agreed to extend the deadline set out in the guidance, and in May 21 agreed to extend again until March 2022. However, it's accepted the challenges presented to businesses and organisations are still ongoing. With that in mind, officers now propose to extend this time for a further 6 months. This would mean that the provision of temporary structures and temporary changes of use would be permitted without any need for planning permission up to the 30th of September 2022 in certain circumstances. It is recommended that members approve an extension of time until the 30th of September and the provision of temporary structures and changes of use as set out in the guidance note. Thank you. Happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Roisin. Okay, any questions, members? Alderman Wilson.
Yeah, no question. I think it's perfectly reasonable to, given the realities of the current era, that we do move to approve this. So I'm happy to propose.
Thank you, Alderman Wilson. Alderman Anderson.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I'm happy to second that. We're still in uncertain times out there, and I think that it's only but right that we extend this for another period. And I'm happy to second. Thank you.
Thank you, Alderman Anderson. Any other questions or queries, members? Not seeing any other lights on or hands up. So we have a proposal from Alderman Wilson, seconded by Alderman Anderson, to approve the recommendation. Are we all agreed? Okay, all agreed on that one. So item 3.2, against another decision item relating to the Department of Infrastructure issues paper. I'm going to be handing over to Helen Stoops, who'll take us through this one. Helen's joining us on Zoom. So whenever you're ready, Helen.
Thank you, Chair, and good afternoon, members. Members may recall Minister Mallon's announcement in April 21 to review strategic planning policy on renewable and low carbon energy. To inform this process, the Department for Infrastructure is undertaking stakeholder engagement and advised Council on the 15th of December of the publication of an issues paper entitled Review of Strategic Planning Policy on Renewable and Low Carbon Energy. A copy of the issues paper can be found at Appendix 2. Comments to the issues paper will assist in informing a draft policy document, which the Department aims to publish later this year. Once published, this draft policy document will be subject to full public consultation. The issues paper published sets out the current planning policy context as reflected in the SPPS and the wider policy context, including the challenges in relation to addressing the climate emergency. It also focuses on specific planning matters and seeks views on key issues, including energy targets and strategic planning policy, locational considerations, wind turbines and amenity considerations, solar farms and agricultural land, and emerging technologies and other issues. Given the wider policy context, the issues paper has been circulated to other relevant sections within the Council to ensure the response takes account of broader initiatives. The consultation offers an opportunity to highlight shortcomings of the current policy provision with regards to renewable and low carbon energy development and associated infrastructure. Officers welcome this review and the opportunity to identify the key areas that need to be addressed to enable the planning system to assist with the meeting of renewable energy targets, which includes matters relating to the lack of guidance on emerging technologies, the need for certain issues to be clarified within strategic planning policy, along with the need for technical documents to be updated. A copy of the draft response can be found at Appendix 3. It is recommended that members approve the draft response to DFI as outlined at Appendix 3. Thank you, Chair, and this item is for decision, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Helen. Okay, members, any questions for Helen on this one? Councillor Nicholson.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Thanks, Helen. It's not really a question, but I suppose, I think we're all aware, Chair, of obviously the climate emergency that exists at the moment. And this is a welcome sort of, obviously paper from DFI and I've read the response and I do share the concerns that, there's talk about, sort of non-agricultural land. Now, Northern Ireland is a small place, Chair. And as I say, and we're going through a sort of a situation now where obviously there's been intensive farming and every bit of land is key. So like whatever is done within this, I'm not against it. Like I had actually a very good and interesting a Zoom meeting with a group of farmers down in County Cork in the Bride project, Chair, which basically they put together a pilot of how to farm with nature. And there was different things that the farmers can do on their farms to improve the the carbon emissions, etc. Within their lands, and it was they're aiming to get between 10 and 15%, improvement, or sorry, for nature farming. So I think we just, I suppose I just want to sort of say that, in relation to things like, wind farms and solar farms and things like that, they do refer to this kind of non-agricultural land, and as rightly so in this report, that can be a very important land from a biodiversity point of view, etc. So we just need to watch this space, see what way this develops through the department. I appreciate it's an initial sort of reply to the consultation that's out. But I do think that, and every area is different, Chair, in relation to our geology and geography. And I think that, we as a planning committee, within our area plan and things like that there, I think we should be, really, taking these types of things on board. So, Chair, I'm happy to propose this, to go forward, but I just wanted to sort of, touch on those few things that would concern me, down the line. So, thanks, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Nicholson. Alderman Wilson.
Yeah, I suppose moving on from that, I'm happy to second it. On a wider theme, I know in terms of this council, we have a fairly active building control element as well. And whilst this report is focusing on DFI and, renewable and low carbon energy, as I keep saying, building control have a fairly big remit in terms of not so much what the future holds, but what the situation is at present in terms of building regulations, particularly for, where I see it going or where it needs to go in terms of residential, because that's where the vast majority or, a huge amount of energy is used residentially in people's homes. That's rising, of course, at this minute in time and could rise further and put even more pressure on everyone and by ratio then further pressure on the most vulnerable. So with that being the case, how do we get or do building control of a role in contributing in this area by far as, in terms of having homes, requirements on homes to be such that a lot less energy is used and therefore people are spending a lot less on energy, and that's having an immediate impact on, greenhouse gas emissions and all the rest of it, because it's taking less energy to live in a house or wherever. I'm just wondering, I know Tom's here, what do building control play a part in this? I know it's departmentally maybe not the best fit, but is there a wider conversation happening on that, because it's completely interlinked?
Thank you, Alderman Wilson. Tom, do you want to come in on that?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, Alderman Wilson makes a very good point. And I can tell you that the members will remember that there was a consultation just in October time, and the central or department of the BSP Building Standards branch within the DOF are now taking on board all the responses. And I can tell you that there is cross-departmental discussions as to how to deliver. As you recall, the conservation fuel and power issue, the targets, the recommended proposal was to improve the targets by 40%, which would bring Northern Ireland in line with England and Wales. That was to say that's one that the members had agreed to as the recommended way forward. And I think that was one that most councils have agreed the best way forward. That is coming forward, as I say, the target is that those are coming out later this year, those proposals, but they are, I believe, with the Minister at the minute. But I am aware that those departments are discussing with all the various departments as to how you tie all these issues together. And so we will know further probably at the end of March as to where we are with that consultative response, with the view, I believe, to implement, I think one of the targets is May, with a fair wind to bring it in.
Thank you, Tom. You content, Alderman Wilson? Okay, Councillor Toman.
Thanks, Chair. I'm just happy enough with the draft response. Just a question. The deadline is February 11th, 5 p.m. I'm just mindful the full council is later on in the month. Is there just that opportunity to make amendments, or is there scope to make amendments to the draft consultation? Thanks.
Thanks. Do you want to come in on that one, Helen?
Yes, thank you, Chair. Yes, I've been in contact or whatever with DFI, so they were advised that our response would be officers' response, and if there's any other issues raised at full council, they will take them on board.
Thank you, Helen. You content, Councillor Toman? Okay, Councillor Nicholson.
That's not me. No, look, thanks, Chair. Let me back in. And I suppose it's leaning in the back of what obviously Tom had replied to Alderman Wilson. There's common knowledge, Tom, we're behind the Republic of Ireland and England, Scotland and Wales in relation to our construction methods for thermal and things. So in your opinion, I think you said March was obviously, is this NZEB you're referring to, or is NZEB now gone? And is there any discussions about sort of, I know for a fact that, you know, the new builds that's being built now are not the problem. It's the old stock. Is there any plan to sort of introduce anything in discussions with the department to, you know, assist people in upgrading their existing, you know, thermal elements, be it roof, be it walls? I know there was things about windows and things and stuff and boilers, but it needs to be more than that. I'm sure you agree. And there's new methods out there. You can externally insulate and you can do different things. And you and I had a conversation earlier on about loft insulation and things like that. So look, there's things you can do to the old stock. But I suppose in relation to that, is there any discussions with the department of any incentive? Because obviously I share, you know, Councillor Wilson's, you know, obviously, you know, buildings do have a responsibility in relation to this, i.e. the amount of energy you put in, it has to stay in, and that's where insulation comes into it. But in the context of an old building, and I'm not talking about a listed building, that's a different category altogether. It's just like, you know, 60s, 70s, which we have plenty of. Is there any discussions in relation to that type of structure getting some sort of retrofit, if you like? Thanks, Tom.
Okay, Councillor Nicholson. Tom, do you want to come back on that one?
Thank you, Chair. Well, building regulations themselves, as Councillor will be aware, that are primarily for new buildings or new extensions, or if there's a major alteration to a building. There are various grant schemes being discussed, I believe, subject to finance. But when they come forward, I'm just not quite sure. This is the phase one of 5-phase approach that the department are doing, but it's essentially targeted at this point in time any new construction works. It's not dealing with in this phase any sort of retrofit projects. Having said that, discussions are being held as to what targets would be improved upon, because there are, as a member will be aware, there are targets there at the moment. If you have an existing wall and you want to upgrade, there's a minimum target at the moment, and the proposal is to improve upon that again. But in this first phase, it's essentially for new build, new extensions, or change of use, but not the as Councillor quite mentioned his point. There is quite a lot of existing stock out there that this will not necessarily address.
Thanks, Tom. You can thank Councillor Nixon. Okay, Councillor McLeod.
Yes, Chair, thanks for letting me in, and apologies for being a few minutes later and late. And yeah, broadly supportive of the responses we have in front of us. And I suppose it was just to maybe highlight question 6 in terms of the solar farms and agricultural land. And as someone who farms beside a recently installed solar farm, I think it was just to compliment whoever has written the 2-paragraph response to this question, because I think they have got the tone about right in terms of recognising the major issues, because I know certainly, the farm that I have in my mind, or that is my neighbour's farm, is some of the best agricultural land that we have within the borough. So I think the response in terms of tone and balance is just about right, and it's just to congratulate the author. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor McLeod. Helen, you're getting plenty of praise here tonight in your team. Okay, members, no other lights on, so the recommendation was proposed by Councillor Nicholson, seconded by Alderman Wilson. We all content, members? Okay. On the next item, 3.3, it's an item for information relating to an update on planning caseloads. And I'll hand over to Damien Mulligan, Head of Planning.
Thank you, Chair. Good afternoon, members. Members, you'll see from this report information relating to live caseloads and decisions issued and so on. So the headlines you'll see from the report: the number of decisions issued during the month of January was 87. Number of applications received in January was 89. Should mention, members, that this was a very short reporting period because we had our January committee on the 12th of January. So it was actually a 3-week. This is a 3-week period that we're reporting on. So the numbers are relatively low compared to normal. So it was 87 issued, 89 received. The current live caseload stands at 1506, which is approximately the same as it was last month. We had 1 call-in from an elected member, which makes it 30 call-ins year to date. And happy to take any queries or questions on any of that, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Damien. Councillor Nicholson.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Thanks, Damien, for the report. And look, it's kind of as you were. You're sort of, you've steadied the ship. And I suppose we're obviously aim is to get that 1506 down to the manageable target that you're aiming for. And I suppose I have a couple of questions, Damien. First is in relation to staffing. Are you fully staffed? Is there more that you're still looking for staff? Is there difficulty getting staff? Just a wee bit of a detail in that. And the other one is completely off field is that the planning portal, Damien, has been down this last week or so, and it's been a major issue. I've been contacted by a number of people about it. So can you give me an update of where that is? I know it's DFI's and sort of in charge of that. So I'll just wee bit of an update of where we are with that one. So thank you. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Nicholson. Damien, do you want to come back on those?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Thanks, Councillor Nicholson. I'll maybe start with the second question around the planning portal. Yeah, there have been difficulties with the planning portal for about the last 3 weeks, if even longer perhaps, which are affecting not just this council, but affecting all councils and all users. Now, I recently wrote the DFI to bring this to their attention to find out what exactly they could do to address the issue. It's affecting performance of the council and every other council, and it's affecting anyone who uses it. The response was that they were looking into it. There's a meeting, I understand, taking place today, and I'm told that that meeting will hopefully resolve it. I think the meeting is between DXC, who manage and maintain the current system, and other parties, but we're hoping that there will be, the matter will be resolved today. If it isn't, I will be writing again to DFI to ask them to urgently address it, because its impact on ourselves and all users. So appreciate the point you're making. In relation to staffing, yes, we are having difficulty filling some of the posts that we have at the moment. Look, as members will recall, we had funding granted to us last year, around April or May last year, for 5 additional planners. We've only been successful in filling 2 of those 5 posts. The difficulties we're having in getting staff who are right for the post is incredible. This is being faced by all. We're competing with every other council to try and get the right staff, so it's proving very difficult. So we've only filled 2 of the 5. We're continuing to work with human resources to find ways of filling those posts, so we'll continue to work on that. We have 2 currently vacant posts within our permanent staff. We're working to replace those 2 people. One is due to start in March. The other post, which is a planning post, we're going to advertise that as soon as possible. I understand from human resources that'll be in a few weeks' time. We then have a number of ongoing vacant posts because of maternity and sickness absence. So overall, we have 7 vacant posts. It's a 14% vacancy level at the moment. And at one point, you'll recall, members, it was 20%, and we had a 20% vacancy level for quite some time. It's now come down to about 14%. But we're continuing to work and do what we can to fill the remaining vacant posts. And I'm happy to keep you informed of progress.
You, Damien, are you content, Councillor Nixon? Yeah. Okay. Alderman Wilson?
Yeah, thanks, Damien, for the report. I suppose it's just on the wider point. I know you're probably well aware, as many of us are, with the Audit Office report into planning. I suppose it's just it wouldn't be or it would be remiss if we didn't pick up on that. And I suppose going back way to the start of something I continually said at the time was the fact that, and you touched on it in your response there in terms of staffing, and that's the fact that we are in competition with 10 other councils, and that's pretty stark in terms of economic terms, because we do want to be the borough that processes applications the quickest, and that's saying that with due regard to all the issues you have spoken about in terms of attracting staff and maintaining staff and that. So I understand that, but I'm just curious as to know what consultation with the Audit Office have you had prior to this report, just to get your view on it, and going forward how we seek to address what is a pretty negative headline. I know in the Belfast Telegraph where it says NI's planning system could cause economic damage, and it isn't a great headline, and we're all part of this committee, and we all want to see a situation where applications are coming in. They're coming in as fast as they come in at the minute, but if they came in, if we were performing to our optimum with the correct number of staff under ideal circumstances, then that word would be getting out, and we would be then attracting more applications, because more people would want to be pushing on with projects in this borough as opposed to another borough. And I'm talking about the bigger projects and that. So I think it's a situation where you want to be a victim of your own success, and with that will come a great additional workload, but we need to be able to be responsive to that, and the fees and that we're charging are reflective of that, and it allows us to be resourced correctly. And I think that's maybe where we aren't getting it right in terms of our resource. A lot of pressure on planners in terms of what's expected of them. And I can only imagine, I know, if you're sitting with so many caseloads and you don't get and I don't know, and maybe staff can enlighten me on this, but you're maybe struggling to see, a tangible outcome of all that other than, the applications process, but another one has took its place. So I think we need to be cognizant of that as well in terms of the strain maybe on our existing planners if we don't have enough resource in place, that the load is equally spread effectively to allow, a greater level of work to be done, and we don't burn our planners out, for want of a better word, because we have a duty of care to them as well. So it's just reflective of those points, if possible.
Okay, Damon?
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Thanks, Alderman Wilson. Yeah, you raised some very good points. And look, in relation to the audit report, I was going to mention, or the Chair was going to refer to it under AOB, that the report was published yesterday. And very interesting read, I have to say. And a report on that will come to the March committee because it's quite a lengthy document. There's quite a lot to it. But it does touch on quite a number. It touches on everything across the planning system, including financing and resourcing. And I think it acknowledges that possibly from day one, the financing and resourcing wasn't quite there. But I'm reluctant to say too much in that until obviously we had a chance to properly review it, and we'll bring forward the details next month. But certainly financing, resourcing, consistency in terms of approach to planning, particularly around processing applications and enforcement cases, touches on that. But it doesn't even restrict itself just to councils, but also how DFI as the regional planning authority in Northern Ireland, how they're performing as well. So the content is very interesting indeed. In relation to ourselves, absolutely right. We are competing with other councils for staff, but it isn't even just restricted to other councils. We're competing with, for example, the Planning Appeals Commission and others out there, private sector included, for staff, and it is proving extremely difficult to find the right staff. If we wanted to, we could bring bodies in, but that's not going to make a difference just bringing anyone in. We want to make sure we get the right people who will hit the ground running and will make a difference and make a positive difference. And it's a challenge. And we're exploring with human resources at the moment. We're having discussions about what we might be able to do differently to try and fill the 3 posts that I mentioned earlier. So we'll continue to have that dialogue with them and hopefully have some success in the near future on it. I think hopefully I've covered all of the issues you raised there, Alderman Wilson. If I've missed anything, I'm happy to address it.
Thank you, Damien. You can tend to Alderman Wilson, and then we will have that further report next month. Councillor Wilson.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Damien. It's just a general question around timeframes. Was brought to my attention a local football club had an application submitted, and it was up to 3 months before a case officer was appointed to it. Is that the general time frame, or should somebody be appointed sooner at an earlier stage?
Thanks, Chair. No, what I can tell you is that all applications that are submitted will be referred to a planning officer. But it may be a very senior officer who takes it initially, who will then transfer it to another officer after a period of time. But please be sure the applications are not being submitted and not going anywhere. They will be validated. We will have consultations done. We will carry out our neighbour notification process, which is making obviously neighbouring properties aware. And the process will start, but there may be a transfer of the application from one officer to another at some point in time. I fully acknowledge the concerns around timescales at the moment. Touched upon this, I think, last month, where the 15-week target is not being hit at the moment. The difficulties we have around that go back to the challenges we've had over the last 12 or 18 months from when COVID set in. When we look at our statistics and our performance against targets pre-COVID, we were performing extremely well. In the year before COVID, we met 2 of the 3 statutory targets. The one we missed was our majors. But even though we missed it, we were significantly better than the Northern Ireland average, significantly better. The year before that, we met all 3 of our statutory targets. And the year before that, we were coming in 3rd out of 11 councils against most of the targets we were being assessed against. So COVID has hit us badly. The combination of factors that have contributed to that. But like as I've mentioned already, we're trying to fight our way out of it. We're using overtime at the moment. We've been using that for a while, but staff are now growing a little bit weary, and there's not as good an uptake, which is why we need to fill the other 3 posts that I mentioned earlier. So we're fighting back to try and come out of it. Confident that we will, when we've all our posts filled, that we will start to bring the caseloads back down, and that will enable us to hit our targets again. Notwithstanding all of that, we've still managed to hit one of the 3 targets this year, and we will be very close to meeting, by the end of this business year, we'll be very close to meeting 2 of the 3. And that's taken on board all of the challenges around resourcing and caseloads we've had over the last 12 months.
Okay, thank you, Damien, for that. Councillor McLeod.
Yes, Chair, thanks for letting me in, and thank you to Damien for the report. Yeah, Chair, I was just wanting to back up my colleague Alderman Wilson in terms of his question around the Audit Office report. And, you know, I suppose mention was made of the whole system operating in what was known as ideal circumstances. And you know, surely ideal circumstances has to be that you know your costs, and you know that has to be the very, very basis of your operation. And I certainly appreciate your honesty, Damien, in terms of, you know, so saying that the financing and resourcing perhaps from day one wasn't there. And also, I'm certainly hearing you that you're not wanting to say too much until you have a chance to maybe digest the report yesterday. But the one thing that I would maybe, you know, ask you on, or maybe even for stronger press you on, are you getting the sense that there is much of a mood to go to full cost recovery or something like that, that the system would be on a firmer footing? Thanks, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor McLeod. Damien?
Yeah, thanks, Chair, and thanks, Councillor McLeod. Yes, look, I suppose when planning transferred to local government, the cost was supposed to be cost neutral. In other words, it wasn't going to cost local government any additional finance or money. That hasn't quite worked out, and there are many reasons for that. And I think one of the things that's coming out of the audit report is whether or not, for example, the planning fees that are being charged at the moment are sufficient to help fully resource the planning services across Northern Ireland, the various councils, and even DFI itself. There is absolutely no doubt that whenever planning was transferred from central to local government, that it wasn't properly resourced. There were skills gaps, for example. You know, they didn't transfer staff who would have been known as working in special studies, retail, for example, minerals and the likes. All of those skills were not properly transferred to each council. Also, I suppose what you could argue is that the targets that were introduced for councils to try and adhere to were much more stringent than they ever would have been when the Department of the Environment were the planning authority here. So those more stringent targets were introduced without, you know, arguably without having a fully resourced complement of staff in each and every council. There was also an inconsistency in terms of how you know, the staff were distributed across the 11 councils. Because when you look at the caseloads across the 11 councils, they're not the same. There are, you know, significant differences between what, for example, we would have and what some of the other councils would have. We typically receive the 4th highest number of planning applications across the 11 councils. But when you look at how we are resourced against some of the councils that have much fewer applications than us, you know, there may not be an awful lot of difference. So arguably there's not a level, it's not a level playing field on which performance is being assessed at the moment, this moment in time. Yes, targets. The other thing I would say as well is probably what was properly considered when planning transferred was how much councils were going to end up paying on legal advice. And you know, so if you're wondering why planning isn't cost neutral, I would say that's one of the factors that is contributing to it. But certainly, you know, I'm, as I said earlier, reluctant to say too much at this moment in time until we've had the detail of the report properly reviewed. But look, hopefully I've tried to answer your question as honestly as I can without having all the detail of the report in front of me. But if there's anything further around that, I'm happy to take it. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you, Damien. Alderman Anderson.
Thank you, Chair. It's just back to Councillor Wilson's issue that he raised in the processing of the applications. I know the various issues that are involved and has been for some time with COVID and such like, and the number of staff has been raised here many times. Damien, can I ask through the Chair to you, Damien, is there any blocking of the system with consultees that's being asked, or is it all because of this council that we just can't go? Is there, even with our own, I know it was raised here maybe last month, environmental health and such like, but are we in any way being held back in processing these? Have they the same difficulties, all the consultees? It's just a general question to see what we can do to try and meet our targets and meet those timeframes. Like I think Councillor Wilson mentioned 3 months to get a particular application on board. I would like to see that going quickly through the system, and if these applications can be processed quickly, that we clear the decks and get them out the door. I appreciate there's others maybe are more difficult and not straightforward, but just a general opinion. And Damien, can you see an end game to this anyway soon to try and get these applications moved quicker? Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Chair, and thanks, Alderman Anderson. Yeah, look, the performance of consultees is critical in the planning process. You know, I would say that there's 2 big issues in you know, affecting the timescales of processing an application. One is the quality of the application, and another is the performance of the consultees. So they have a big part to play. A number of the government departments at the moment are struggling with resourcing difficulties, Rivers Agency, for example, and that does impact on timescales for responding to planning applications. Now, there is work ongoing, cross government work at the moment between councils and DFI and so on, to try and find a way of improving the consultation process, working better with consultees in terms of what information they receive, when they receive it, not over consulting, for example, as well. That work is ongoing, and a new protocol was rolled out very recently for all councils to follow to try and speed the process up. But if you've got resourcing challenges within some of the government departments, it's, you know, there's going to be a delay. There's no getting around that. There are other issues at the moment. For example, NI Water are raising issues in relation to many applications at the moment because of capacity issues within their network. There was one application which was on the schedule for today's meeting. We've had to take it off because of an NI Water issue there. Everything else was ready to go, but because of that NI Water issue, it's had to come off, which is, you know, that would have been within the 30-week target for a major application. We're now going to miss the target. So it's extremely frustrating for officers and for members. So yes, there are many issues around the performance of consultees. I think you touched upon the Environmental Health Department, and look, the issue was raised at the last meeting, and there has been a meeting with the Environmental Health Department as to what we can do to try and speed up the response times from them. Again, they have had some issues with losing staff and finding difficulties in replacing those members of staff, and that has impacted on their response times. But we're working that through with them as to what each side can do to try and make the process work more slickly. I'm happy to keep members updated on that, but hopefully we will start to see an improvement in response times.
Thank you, Damien. Alderman Anderson.
Just quickly, Chair, and thank Damien for that full response. So it's not really, but when applications go in, we as members and others are looked upon as the council or the planning committee or who's holding these applications up. But by that response, Damien, there's many factors here and consultees, so it may not all be down to this council and the planning committee. So I think it needs to be highlighted that the difficulties are going further than the planning and the planning committee here, that we have those issues to try and that they catch up again and to help us, to assist us to get them off, get them cleared. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Yeah, thanks, Alderman Anderson. Look, next month I'm hoping to be in a position to bring a report to members on the performance of consultees, because we have some information. We've been reviewing that and analysing that, and hope to be in a position to bring it to members next month, which will give you a picture of how those different consultees are performing at the moment. So that will maybe help address some of the issues you've raised, Alderman Anderson. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you. Okay, members, no other lights on or hands up. We're content to note that report. Okay, happy to note. Okay, members, on to agenda item 4, report from the head of building control, and 2 information items. First one's 4.1, dual language street name request. Hand over to Tom Lavery, head of building control.
Thank you, Chair, and good afternoon, members. Members will be aware that the Council received an application in July 2019 for a dual language street sign in respect of a specified street in our council area. The Council has adopted a street naming and numbering policy comprised 2 stages, as outlined in the report. As noted in our report to this committee in September last, following verification, Council officers confirmed that the Stage 1 requisite threshold under the policy had been met, and therefore the application could progress to Stage 2. In line with Stage 2, on the 26th of November 2021, officers issued by post a survey, which is an Appendix 1, to all occupiers of premises in the relevant street. And for the purpose of clarification, the policy states that occupiers of that street, occupiers of premises in that street shall be any persons over 18 whose name appears on the electoral register, plus the owner or tenant of any person in possession of commercial premises, but not employees. In accordance with the policy, the occupiers were notified that all survey responses were to be returned to the Council via the prepaid envelope provided within 1 month of receipt. Allowing for the Christmas, the results of the survey responses were verified by officers on the 17th of January 2022. The results of the survey is that the required threshold has not been met for this application. The applicant will be informed in writing that the application has concluded and that it has not met the policy threshold, where it would be presented to members for their decision. Thank you, Chair, and this is for members' information.
Thank you, Tom, for taking us through that. Members, that's an information item. Any questions or query at this stage? Not seeing any other hands up or lights on. Okay, members, happy to note. Okay, happy to note. We're on to 4.2 then. Update on building control and property certificate applications. Staying with Tom Lavery.
Thank you, Chair. This report to keep members informed of the workload undertaken by the Building Control Department from the period 1st of April 2021 to 31st of January 22. Notably in Appendix 2, in this first 10 months period of this financial year, we received 2,751 applications, which is actually 342 more than the equivalent period last year. These projects have a notional construction investment value in the borough of just over 195 million. During this 10-month period, we undertook 2024 plan assessments, and a statutory decision notice were issued on all of these. Again, this is just under 400 more than we did last year. The department has also completed 12,301 site inspections in that 10-month period, which is just over 2,800 more than the equivalent period last year. The department has also continued to deliver the Council's property certificate function for the conveyancing of properties across the borough. In this first 10-month period, we have received and administered 3,521 new applications and issued certificates to solicitors and agents relating to property sales on each of these. This is actually 878 more than the equivalent period last year. So all of which hopefully show signs of positivity continue within our borough. So this is for members' information, but happy to take any questions members may have.
Thank you, Tom. Any questions or queries on this one? Or happy to note, members? Okay, members, happy to note that one. Okay, next item, item number 5 is confidential report. So I need a proposer and a seconder to move into committee. Proposed by Councillor McClelland, seconded by Alderman Anderson. Okay, I just have to read out the following statement. Members and online viewers, in accordance with Schedule 6 of the Local Government Act, exempt information, we will now be moving into a confidential session of the council. This means that we'll be turning off the public feed of the meeting. This will be returned when the meeting is restarted. Can I ask the ICT officers to please turn off the live feed and confirm with me when the confidential section of this meeting can proceed? That's back. Okay. Members, that's us on to agenda item 7, correspondence. There is none. Agenda item 8, any other relevant business. The only one I had was relating to the plan and audit report, but we discussed that earlier. Okay, members, that's us for the first part of this meeting completed. Will we agree to reconvene at 4:15 to do the planning applications? Okay, could I ask IT team to pause the live? on the live feed. Let me know what's on. Okay, members, that's us back. I just need to read out the following statement. Members of the public are advised that the Planning and Regulatory Services Committee is being held in the Council Chamber in Craigavon Civic Centre. However, due to COVID restrictions, the number of persons who can be physically be facilitated in the chamber is severely limited. As a result, members of the public are only able to view the meeting on YouTube, and anyone wishing to address the committee has been invited in the first instance as an attendee via Zoom. Audio recording is being used to assist in preparing the formal minutes. Therefore, anyone participating in the meeting consents to it being recorded and being live streamed on YouTube. Also, during the course of this meeting, questions may be asked by councillors who are members of the Planning and Regulatory Services Committee, of planning officers, applicants for planning permission, objectors, or those speaking on their behalf. In doing so, councillors endeavour to ascertain the information which they feel is necessary to enable them to determine the application. However, members of the public should note that the councillors will not reach a conclusion as to whether an application should be approved, refused, or deferred until the debate on the application has concluded. Okay, members, so first item is Appendix 1, application number LA08/2020/0453/F. Members, this is one that we dealt with at the last committee, so we're just conditions only today, but I'm going to hand over to Roisin Hammond, who'll take us through the application. Over to you, Roisin.
Thank you, Chair. Members will recall at a meeting of the Planning and Regulatory Services Committee on the 12th of January, it was agreed that application number LA08/2020/0453/F for a change of use from a dwelling to a house in multiple occupancy at 156 Thomas Street, Portadown be approved, subject to an additional condition requiring the submission of details of a management plan. It was agreed the wording of the condition would be presented back to the next committee for members' approval. Officers now propose the following condition. Prior to the commencement of the use of the development hereby approved, a management plan for the proposal, which shall include details of how the refuse from the premises shall be stored and disposed of, shall be submitted to and agreed in writing by the council and thereafter implemented. And the reason is to protect residential amenity. Thank you, Chair. Happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Roisin. Okay, members, any questions or queries on this one? No, we had a good debate on it last month. Otherwise, Councillor McLean.
Happy to propose the recommendation. Thank you.
Okay, members of proposal. Any other? Is there any seconders for that? Or Councillor Tom.
Just happy to second, Chair. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Tillman. Okay, members, with the proposal to accept the recommendation from Councillor McLennan, seconded by Councillor Tillman. All agreed, members? Okay, all agreed, and thank you, Roisin. Okay, members, Appendix 2 was removed from the schedule. It requires further consultation with environmental health. Appendix 3, application number LA08/2020/1060. Okay, we're handing over again to Roisin Hammond, Principal Planning Officer, to present a report and PowerPoint presentation. Over to yourself, Roisin.
Thank you, Chair. This application seeks outline planning permission for 2 dwellings on an infill site in accordance with Policy CTY8 of Planning Policy Statement 21 and is being presented to the committee tonight as it's being called in by 2 members. Firstly, I'd like to correct an error in the report. In the section of the report dealing with the assessment of the proposal against Planning Policy Statement 4, it states that the existing dog kennel business is a Class B1 use. However, it should state that it's a sui generis use. This does not impact on the assessment of the proposal against the policy set out in PPS 4, as the preamble of PPS 4 states that the policy approach and associated guidance contained within the document may be useful in assessing proposals for other sui generis employment uses. The application site is located in the rural area in the southwest settlement of Bleary, as defined in the Craigavon area plan. The application site lies between number 15 and number 19 Dugan Road, and there's an existing dog kennel business to the rear of the site behind a post and wire fence. The proposal has been assessed against Policy CTY8 of PPS 21. Officers consider there to be more than 3 buildings along this section of the road. Number 15 and a south building, number 19 and number 21 all have a frontage to the Dugan Road, and officers are satisfied this constitutes a substantial and continuously built up frontage for the purposes of policy. In considering the size of the gap in the context of the existing pattern of development, officers consider that the site is a small gap within a built up frontage, and 2 dwellings could be accommodated on the application site whilst respecting the existing pattern of development along the frontage. Therefore, the proposal is considered to be acceptable when assessed against CTY 1 and CTY 8 of PPS 21. Number 15 Ballydugan Road is a B1 listed building of architectural and historic interest. Historic Environment Division have been consulted and raised no objections, subject to conditions on the siding height and materials of the building. With regards to the impact on residential amenity, it is considered that sufficient separation distance could be maintained to ensure that the proposed dwellings are of modest scale and height and would not impinge on the immediate outlook from the neighbouring dwellings. However, a dog kenneling operation was granted planning permission by the former DOE in 2012 within the curtilage of a residential property at number 19 Ballydugan Road. While the kennels currently in site are now larger than originally approved, the historical ortho photographs show these kennels in place since 2014. On this basis, the buildings are immune from enforcement action and are material to this planning consideration. The original permission granted in 2012 did not restrict the number of dogs that could be kept at the site, and the business is licensed for up to 40 dogs at any one time. Officers are concerned about the potential impact on amenity given the separation distances, as the kennels are located immediately adjacent to the western boundary of the application site. The dog kennel business has the potential to give rise to nuisance from noise, odour and light overspill, as the kennels also have outside security lighting within the premises. And officers consider the scale of the activity within 30 to 50 metres of the proposed dwellings would have a detrimental impact on the residential amenity of the prospective occupants of the dwellings. No noise, odour or lighting assessment reports have been submitted by the applicant to demonstrate that the existing kennels would not have any impact on the amenity of the proposed properties. This view is supported by the comments received from the Council's Environmental Health Department that have advised there are insurmountable difficulties associated with the proposal by virtue of noise, odour and light overspill. Therefore, officers do not consider the application site to be suitable for residential use, and that this proposal fails paragraph 5.72 of the SPPS. Policy PED 8 of Planning Policy Statement 4 states that any proposal for development in the vicinity of an existing or approved economic development use that would be incompatible with this use or that would prejudice its future operation will be refused. It goes on to advise that new developments such as housing could prejudice the continued existence of a particular economic development use. Officers in consultation with environmental health accept that this existing business is incompatible with the proposed dwellings and is likely to generate future amenity complaints. On this basis, the proposal fails to comply with PED 8 of PPS 4. A total of 8 objections have been received from 7 postal addresses. The issues raised in the correspondence have all been considered in detail and set out in the report. For the reasons set out above, officers will recommend that this application be refused as is contrary to paragraph 5.72 of the SPPS, as the proposal would fail to provide an acceptable living environment for its prospective residents by reason of noise, light overspill and odour from the established dog kennel business, and the proposal is contrary to the SPPS and PED 8 of Planning Policy Statement 4, in that the proposal is incompatible with the existing economic development use and would prejudice its future operation. And I'm happy to take you through the PowerPoint presentation. Okay, next slide, please. Next slide. And the red arrow will show you the location of the site just within the general area on the Ballydugan Road. Next slide, please. This is our site location plan, and you can see the application site fronting onto the Ballydugan Road as outlined in red. Next slide, please. This is an aerial view of the proposed site. Again, you'll see the area of land fronting onto the Ballydugan Road. That's our application site. And you can see the dog kennels just on the western boundary of the site. Next slide, please. And this is a historical ortho view of the site back in 2014, showing the kennels in place at that time. Next slide, please. This is a photograph taken from the Ballydugan Road. That is looking just our application site on the right-hand side there. You can see the kennels just over the crest of the hill, and that's number 19 and number 21 Ballydugan Road. Next slide, please. And this is another photograph taken in the other direction. You can look down toward Hollymount, which, as you can see, is enclosed in vegetation. That's number 15. Next slide, please. This is a view taken from the laneway running up alongside Hollymount, looking across the application site. Again, you can see number 19 and the kennels, which immediately back onto the application site. Next slide, please. These are photographs of the 3 buildings that we believe constitute the built-up frontage, number 15, number 19, and number 21 Ballydugan Road. And this is a photographs taken just of the site and in the context of where the kennels are. And again, a photograph inside this site showing the actual kennels and the location as they back onto the application site there. That concludes the presentation. Thank you, Chair. Happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Roisin. And members, also in attendance via Zoom is Nell Curry from Environmental Health, who'll be able to take any questions also. Any questions, members? Councillor Savage.
Thank you very much, Chair. And Roisin, thank you for your report. If I could just ask Roisin a question and then one for now, possibly. Roisin, if we were minded to approve this application and these homes were built, could there theoretically be, in a few years' time, an enforcement case against the existing business by the residents of them homes for loss of amenity? And just for now, Chair, if I go now, you've mentioned insurmountable concerns. I have a fair idea what they are, but would you just outline them, please, as well? Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Savage. Maybe bring in Roisin first on that one.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, as I've already outlined, the kennels were originally granted approval back in 2012 by the then DOE. At that time, there was no restriction on the number of dogs that could be kept at the kennels. Now, the kennels, they were constructed, and by 2014 they were constructed, but obviously bigger was granted planning approval. So the buildings themselves are immune. The building has been licensed to take up to 40 dogs and has been for a considerable number of years, so it's unlikely that we would be able to take any enforcement action at this stage. However, that doesn't mean that a complaint couldn't be made by prospective residents, i.e. a nuisance complaint that would be investigated possibly by the environmental health team.
Thank you, Roisin. And Niall, do you want to sort of follow up on those queries from Councillor Savage?
Yeah, the dog kennel operation can take up to 40 dogs onto the site. So there's the likelihood that there will be emissions of dog barking both day and night. In fact, I've had 2 visits out to the site and have witnessed dog barking. It's understanding that site operations include like a 2-hour cleaning and feeding period, morning and evenings. Dogs get excited around this time. There's an increased level of barking. Furthermore, the structure is of block work and tin, so it's got relatively low sound insulation. And the separation distance to the proposal is not adequate either. So there is the likelihood that there will be a significant impact on amenity.
Thank you, Niall. You can thank Councillor Savage. Okay, Alderman Wilson, you're next.
Yeah, I'm just curious from environmental health perspectives. I know there's a number of houses close by. Have there been instances of complaints from existing residents about the dogs barking? And if so, what action was taken or proposed to mitigate that?
I'm not aware of any other complaints. The other nearest residents are further away than the applicant site.
Thank you, Niall. Content, Alderman Wilson. Okay, next then, Councillor Nicholson.
Yep. Thanks, Chair. Thanks, Roisin and Niall, for your presentation. And I suppose this is a new one, Chair. And we've actually got an infill site, but it's being refused because of another outside influence, be it the dog kennels. And obviously these kennels have been built bigger than they were approved, and because they were built some time ago, the enforcement can't be acted on. And as I say, it doesn't seem to be fair to me, to be honest with you. I know it's not a planning policy being fair, but it does seem to be a bit of unfairness in that this obviously suitable site is now being obviously hampered because of this. So my question really is for Niall, really, maybe Roisin as well, but you mentioned 30 to 50 meters, Roisin, in your presentation. What's the basis of that in relation to the distance away from the dog kennels? And I have to say, Niall, dogs barking, I'm shocked. You know what I mean? I think anybody knows who's got a dog will bark. And I suppose there's an element in my head here, like, is there not a case that the dogs are there first and therefore the dwellings come second, therefore you move in at your peril? You know what I mean? Is there an element of that in it? I don't know. It's just in my head, as I say, we go through this so many times in this committee with infill sites, and they're not suitable, but we've got one that actually is really suitable, and unfortunately, these people are being sort of, as I say, hindered by an existing dog business. But look, there's a couple of questions in there, Chair, and I'm happy to listen to it now, and Roisin has to say thank you.
Thank you. I think I'll bring in Roisin first, relating to the distance criteria, and then now relating to potential, rights of any future potential inhabitants of those prospective dwellings. Roisin.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, the measurements that are in the report, obviously, with a concept drawing was submitted with the application by the agent showing how 2 dwellings could be accommodated. And when we measure that out, it is showing the dwellings between 25 and 30 metres to the dog kennels. Now, there is scope to push them forward on the site, so the measurements that we talked about in the report probably are there and pushed forward at the optimum. So that was the basis on where we're getting the measurements from in terms of the proximity to the dog kennels. In relation to the complaint issue, obviously I'm happy to let Niall come in as well, but I know that we have taken advice on that before, and the advice that we got was that just because you come to a complaint, or you come to an issue, or you come to something that would affect your amenity, doesn't mean that you couldn't at a later stage make a complaint.
Yes. In relation to noise complaints, any future residents can make a noise complaint. The consequence of that would mean that the commercial entity would then be investigated, and possible action taken under the Clean Neighbours Environment Act.
Thanks. Now, you're looking back in, Councillor Nixon.
No. Yeah. Look, thanks, Roisin, for your answers. But I see what you're saying, Roisin, that the building, but is there a regulation how far the building has to be away from the commercial entity? I know in sort of countryside policy, you're talking 75 metres, but that's for a farm building. Is that different within, this type of economic sort of business, which obviously is dog kennels? Or is it more, is it less? Or is there not a set distance that it has to be away from that type of business? Thanks, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Nicholson. Roisin, you want to come in on that one?
Yes, thank you, Chair. I'm not aware of there being any set distance that it has to be away from commercial residents or properties, but obviously there is a judgment to be made, and it's based on the business that's there, the level of business, how intense it is, the amount of noise that could be generated from the business. So the 75 metres does refer to distance from agricultural buildings, but I'm not aware of any set distance from commercial business. As I said, there's a judgment to be made on the basis of the intensity of the business.
Thank you, Roisin. Councillor McNally.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. And as Councillor Nicholson alluded to, this is a new one for this committee, and I suppose it's a very good application to call in and just to have this debate on this application. But I suppose what I wanted to ask Roisin was, during your conversations with the applicant or indeed the agent, did you at all discuss any mitigation measures, like, acoustic reports where you can maybe mitigate against some of the noise? I know we've done that around businesses and different things in the past. So, I'm scratching my head here. It's not often that we get something that fits the planning criteria and is knocked back by, and I'd say the influence, as Councillor Nicholson alluded to. So maybe Roisin would answer that, please.
Thank you, Councillor McNally. Roisin, do you want to come in on that? Any potential mitigation measures been discussed?
Well, certainly the agent was made aware of our concerns, and we advised him obviously of our concerns with regard to amenity from the noise, the odour and the light overspill. He was given an opportunity obviously to submit anything, and he did submit a concept layout showing a planted bank along the boundary there where the post and fire wire fence is. And we forwarded that obviously to Environmental Health, but in consideration of what they were proposing, we didn't feel that it overcame our concerns with regard to noise, odour and in fact light overspill. So the mitigation that he had proposed, we feel, didn't overcome the concerns that we had.
Yeah, and just briefly to follow on then, if the applicant was to maybe submit an acoustic report, and there were certain specifications that come out of that would allow, for that noise to be minimised? You know, would that be something the planners would look at?
Thank you, Councillor McNally. Roisin?
Certainly, yes, Chair. If there was a report submitted with mitigation measures proposed, we would obviously have to look at that and would have to consider, you know, what the noise levels were, the ambient noise levels, what the noise levels, the resultant noise levels that would be in the dwellings. What I would say is in our discussions with environmental health, we didn't really feel that, you know, that wouldn't necessarily be successful given the proximity, given the level of dogs, but certainly if that were submitted, we would obviously have to consider it.
Thank you, Roisin. Maybe should we bring in Niall just to get the environmental view on that, whether there could be possible mitigations in place or whether it's a very difficult one?
In relation to the mitigation measures in this particular situation, the problem here for the applicant is that he doesn't have control over the actual kennels. So the main mitigation you'll be looking for there will be increased sound insulation of the kennels, and then further to that, an increased separation distance. And the site as a whole is very close to the kennels.
Thanks, Niall. Thank you on that one. Councillor McClelland.
Yes, Chair, thank you for letting me in. Thank you to both Roisin and to Niall for their presentations and answers thus far. I suppose my question would be sticking on the theme of the potential for mitigations, and I suppose Councillor McNally has covered most of what I was going to raise, but I'll just mention a couple of other things. Number one is the topography of the site. Would be interested to hear, is there any potential that could reduce the smell? And the other thing would be the prevailing wind. So I would be interested in hearing maybe from both Roisin and Niall on those 2 points. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor McClelland. Maybe bring in Roisin first on that one.
Yes, thank you, Chair. The site does rise up away from the road and then levels out, I suppose, towards the dog kennels a wee bit. And I'm not sure that the topography of the site would naturally lend itself to providing any additional mitigation. What I also would say is that, you know, it's not just concerns about, you know, the inside of the properties, the proposed properties, because obviously they could propose additional mitigation by way of, you know, keeping windows closed, etc. But private amenity space of both properties would back right up to the kennels, you know, so it would spoil the enjoyment of their private amenity space as well in terms of noise, odour, potentially light overspill as well. So it's not just about inside the properties themselves. We are taking into account the fact that the private amenity space would run right up to the boundary. But I'm not sure that the topography of the site at the minute would lend itself to providing any mitigation.
Thank you, Roisin. Do you have anything further to add now?
I just add the predominant wind direction for this area is southwesterly direction. So therefore, if there is any odour from the site, you know, the direction will be over towards the proposed residential areas.
Okay, thank you, Niall. Okay, Alderman Wilson.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. It's just leading on from that. I know, so I suppose to get what Roisin's saying, there could be mitigations in the construction of the house. I suppose we're thinking, you know, triple glazing, and that's quite useful for sound deadening and that type of purpose. But the issue is obviously then the outdoor amenity. And I'm just wondering, in light of that, given the topography of the site, would there not be a requirement? It's hard just to gauge, you know, looking at the slides, but there'd be an element of having to level off a portion of that field or dig in, and there could be a case then. I know there's a planted bank mentioned, but would there be any requirements for retaining type structures for the embankment? And with that being the case, would that not deflect or, you know, give the possibility of some of the sound being deflected? Yeah, I'm not sure. I'm not an expert by any means, but it's just to raise the question.
Roisin?
Thank you, Chair. Obviously, this is an outline application, so we don't have full details of what they're proposing in terms of level, size, scale. I'm not convinced that a retaining wall would be necessary here. I think, yes, there may be a certain amount of cutting in, but it could be graded. But again, I don't think that would necessarily overcome our concerns with regard to the impact of noise, odour and light overspill as well.
Thank you, Roisin. Alderman Anderson.
Thank you, Chair. Just to Roisin, just for clarification, Roisin, I don't know if I'm correct in saying this, but do we have a history of something maybe similar brought before us in relation to an agricultural building that was in situ before we got the application? I think it may have been out around that particular area. But what I'm trying to establish, do we have history that because of issues like environmental health issues and such, that we took a decision because of that? Just to clarify. Thank you.
Thanks. Roisin, do you have any sort of examples or?
Yes, you're quite right, Council or Alderman Anderson. There was an application that was taken to committee probably maybe a year and a half ago. It was for the erection of an off-site replacement dwelling in close proximity to an agricultural shed, which was to house pigs. And the same, very similar issues were raised with regard to odour and noise. Where the dwelling was proposed was, it was up close to the shed, and private amenity space ran up to the boundary with the shed. And the members took the view that they agreed with the officer recommendation, and that one was refused. It's with the Plan and Appeals Commission at the minute.
Thank you, Alderman Anderson.
Yes, I'm thankful for that clarification. It was something that I thought was in the back of my mind somewhere. So we have that history as a planning committee, and basically we're working on something similar here. I think if that was the case, that we find ourselves in a situation where we have to be consistent and ensure that we establish and take consistent decisions. So that's all I would have to say. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Alderman Anderson. Councillor Nicholson.
Yeah, Chairman, just for the record, I think the application that Roisin's referring to was one of mine, so I was the agent, so have that recorded, please. Thank you.
Will do, Councillor Nicholson. Okay, members, there's no further lights on or hands up. Any other queries for Roisin or Nell at this stage before we move into the debate stage? I don't see any lights on, members, so we'll move into the debate stage. Anyone want to give a view on this one? Councillor Savage.
Thank you, Chair. I think a few councillors alluded to it. It's not often you get an infill site that ticks all the boxes in terms of planning policy and then falls foul of something else. Look, I think our main consideration here has to be the amenity. You're talking 40 dogs literally at your back door, and I think in previous planning cases, it's been mentioned a buyer beware that you take a risk buying it, but we can't really consider that. We just have to look at the issues here. And as Niall has alluded to, and also in the report, there's insurmountable difficulties from environmental health. So to me, that means there's no mitigations that can be put in place to rectify this. You can't regulate the noise that dogs make. You can't say stop barking at 10 o'clock and start again at 6. It doesn't work like that. So, Chair, I'm veering towards accepting the recommendation is outlined there, regrettably. But, further on down the line, if these houses are built, there could be a noise complaint against the dog kennel. And, we've had issues like that before, the committee. So, we could be opening a can of worms down the road for something that we have done ourselves. So, that's where I'm sort of at the minute, Chair. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Savage. I suppose I would have similar thoughts myself, and they recall the application with regards to the pig shed, and we did lay down refusal on that one. So, Councillor Nicholson.
Yeah, sure. No, look, obviously we've discussed this, and we've got an existing business although it's 3 times bigger than what was approved, but unfortunately, it's got through the net, and there's issues with potentially of noise, odor, and light. My big issue is that there's no legislation to say, because there is dwellings around this, and there's no legislation to say you have to be X number of meters away from this facility. So it's not as if it's out in the middle of nowhere. It is surrounded by dwellings. So that's kind of what I'm mulling over in my head, Chair, at the minute. So as I say, I do feel it's things like this when you see this coming to committee, you ask yourself the question, would we approve a 42 by 6 meter dog kennel up in a rural location in around houses? Probably not, given our past history. But as I say, we are, and as I say, the only thing that in my head is that if the houses around aren't complaining, and they're near as close as potentially these houses could be, that's the sort of debate I'm having in my head, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Nixon. Alderman Wilson.
Yeah, I'm along the same type of lines as Councillor Nicholson. One thing I would ask, and that is, with it being a dog business, there's no guarantee in any walk of life or in any business scenario. Should that business cease, does that unlock the door, so to speak, given that the application meets all the requirements for an infill? Is there an opportunity in that scenario to revisit it, or is the very fact that it is it exists as that type of shared structure, what investigative sort of purpose or process would planners go through in the event of somebody saying, oh, that business is no longer operating, can I pursue an infill application again? Whose word would be taken? Would there be a check on that? If something else started up, would that require a change of use? I would be interested in a wee bit of detail and debate in terms around that scenario. I know it's not a scenario we're dealing with at the minute, but I think it's important going forward.
Thank you, Alderman. So I know you sort of were in the debate stage, but you sort of asked a question, and I think maybe we'll bring in Roisin. Maybe she could shine some light on that. But Roisin.
Yes, Chair, I'm happy to comment. If the dog business ceased to exist, if they stopped keeping 40 dogs there, and those buildings were used for domestic purposes, then yes, if an application came in, we would revisit it on the basis of what was on the ground at that moment in time. If it was to be used for something else, in all likelihood, it would require planning permission. So we would have to go through a process of assessing what the change of use application was and the impact that it would have on adjacent residential properties. If I could just go back to one issue that was raised, obviously, by Councillor Nicholson. Yes, I accept there are other houses in close proximity to this site. Number 15 is 63 metres away from the dog kennels, and there's intervening vegetation and outbuildings. And number 21 is over 50 metres away with intervening buildings and vegetation, and possibly they provide some level of mitigation. They certainly wouldn't be as close as these proposed properties, and their private amenity space wouldn't run up to the boundary of the existing business that's there. Hopefully that clarifies.
Thank you, Roisin. A couple of lights on. Just remember, my members are in the debate stage. Councillor McNally.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I suppose I am conflicted on this particular application, and I suppose that the point that I wanted to make was that it's just a pity that the applicant or the agent wasn't here, because I would have felt a lot more comfortable saying them, go away and try and work on mitigation measures, something that would, bring that level of noise down to acceptable, something that's acceptable to environmental health. But since nobody is here, I think our hands are tied, and it's just a pity because it does tick every all box. So that's just my thoughts.
Councillor McNally, I would agree, and I know the applicant and agent would have been invited and declined on this occasion. Alderman Anderson.
Yes, Chair, thank you. Yes, it is. It is one that it does meet everything else, but looks of it with as infill, which is what we haven't faced before with an Inverness. It is other reasons, but I'm still coming back at what this committee has done before and what can be where we would sit if we have turned down an application before with the agricultural dwelling, which I believe was similar to this. Roisin tells us it's with the planning appeals. Maybe there's other avenues for this, but we have made a decision on something similar to this, and that would be my view. That we have to be very careful here that we can't say we'll permit one and not permit another, and that's where I'd have the difficulty. Thank you.
Thank you, Alderman Anderson. That is a good point. Okay, members, no other lights on or hands up. We're in a debate stage. Any views before going to the decision phase? No. Okay, members, we'll move into the decision phase. Any proposals on this application? Councillor Savage.
Sure, I'm happy to propose we accept the recommendation as outlined in the report.
Thank you, Councillor Savage. Proposal there. Is there any seconder? Any seconders, members? Okay, I'll second that proposal, Councillor Savage. So a proposal on the floor from Councillor Savage, second by myself, to accept the recommendation. Well agreed, members. Okay. Thank you, Roisin, for taking us through that, and thank you, Nell, for coming to this committee. I wish you all the best for the rest of your evening. Thank you. Okay, members, we're on to Appendix 4, application number LA08/2021/1371/F. I'm handing over to Sinead McAvoy, Senior Planning Officer, to present the report and PowerPoint presentation. Okay.
Thank you, Chair. The application is a Section 54 application to change conditions attached to a previously approved retail development. The reason this application is before the Planning and Regulatory Service Committee is because it's a major application. Officers have taken that members have read the report in full, so this will be a synopsis only. A Section 54 application is an application for the same development but requesting different conditions to be attached. Planning permission was granted for a retail development with car parking, landscaping, access and associated site works on this site in August 2020. At that time, officers attached conditions relating to the goods proposed for retail sale in line with the submitted retail impact assessment. This was necessary as the retail impact assessment considered the likely trade diversion of the shops within the town centre from the sale of those retail goods. The application has submitted a revised full retail impact assessment under this application to consider the impact of the sale of the goods now proposed. In summary, the overall gross size of the retail unit will remain as approved, however, as one single unit rather than two. The 975 square metres of convenience goods will remain as approved. However, the 790 square metres of bulky retail goods approved will change to comparison goods. This will also necessitate some internal changes. The overall impact on any town centre due to this alteration will not be significantly adverse. The overall impact on the Lurgan town centre will be 4.3% and 2.1% from Craigavon and 0.8% from Portadown. The access and parking provision is as approved. There has been no third-party objections to this proposal. The overall proposal is investment of 5 million in the Lurgan area, which has clear positive economic impacts for the town. Having regard to the above, and after undertaking a policy assessment and planning balancing exercise, officer of opinion that the application complies with the area plan, the SPPS, and all other relevant planning policies. On that basis, it is recommended that the variance of these conditions are approved. Let's take them through the slides. Next slide, please, Patricia. So that's the location of the site within the general area, so southeast of Lurgan Town Centre. Next slide, please. So that's an aerial view of the proposed site. And that's the site location plan, so it's off the Millennium Way, the new road to through Lurgan. That's the approved site layout, so it was 2 units rather than 1 single unit is now proposed. And that's the elevations as approved. And that's the approved floor plan up close. And this proposed floor plan, so is removing that internal wall to provide 1 retail unit. And that's a view of the building. So as well under construction at the present time, the site inspection, and that as approved, the same size, gross floor area as approved will remain as is, only with 1 retail unit and with comparison goods rather than bulky goods. Thank you, members.
Thank you, Sinead. And also attending via Zoom is Eamon Lockery, the agent from Analtus Planning, who has speaking rights and be able to answer any members' questions also. And you're very welcome, Eamon. Okay, members, any questions or queries on this one? Councillor Nicholson.
Yeah, Chair, I remember this application. It was some time ago. I think Sinead referred to it, but just for clarification, like from looking at what we've got here in front of us, realistically, there's no difference in the size of the building. The only change is there's a wall that divided into 2 units is gone. And on the front elevation, there's 1 entrance rather than 2. I'm just looking at what's been built on site. Is that in essence the only differences really in relation to the what we approved previously?
Yes, with regards to the physical built form, that's the only alterations, yes.
Yeah, thank you, Sinead. Councillor Nicholson. Okay, members, any other questions or queries? Not seeing any hands on or lights up, so we'll move into the debate stage. Any views on this, members? Happy to move into the decision phase. Okay, members, we'll move into the decision phase. Any proposals on this one? Councillor Nicholson.
Yeah, Chair, I do remember this one, and there was a long debate about this one that night. I think there was in relation to economic impact and stuff in the town centre of Lurgan, and it was demonstrated clearly that night that there was minimal impact, and it's as I say, it's pretty much as was approved previously, bar a few little alterations. So I'm happy to accept the recommendation and propose it, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Nicholson. So proposal, or anyone want to second that proposal? Alderman Barr on Zoom. If you want to come in, Alderman Barr.
Happy to second, Chair.
Okay, thank you, Alderman Barr. So proposal on the floor from Councillor Nicholson, second by Alderman Barr to approve the recommendation. Any other proposals, members? Okay, not seeing any. We're all agreed with that, that proposal, members? All agreed. Okay, thank you, Sinead, and thank you, Eamon. You had an easy time tonight. Okay, members, we're on to Appendix 5, which has been removed from the schedule as it requires further consultation with NI Water. Members, we're on to Appendix 6, application number LA08/2021/1031, and we need to bring in Councillor Nicholson.
Yeah, Chair, I'll declare pecuniary interest in this one, so I'll leave that alone. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Nicholson. Okay, so I'm going to hand over to Liam McCrum, Senior Planning Officer, to present the report and PowerPoint presentation. Over to you, Liam.
Thank you, Chair. This application seeks an outline planning permission for a dwelling and garage on a farm. It is before members as the applicant is an elected member of the council. The application site is located in the open countryside, approximately 2 miles from Warrenstown, and is therefore the relevant policy context is provided by the SPPS and PPS 21, particularly CTY 10.
In terms of the principle of development, officers confirm that the farm business is currently active and has been established in accordance with criteria A of CTY 10. Officers are also satisfied that no dwellings or development opportunity sites have been sold off from the holding within the last 10 years, therefore in compliance with criteria B of CTY 10. In respect of criteria C, officers, for the reasons set out in the detail of the body of the report, are satisfied that new building is visually linked with the established group of buildings on the farm. Officers are satisfied the proposal therefore complies with policy CTY 10 and therefore the principle of development is acceptable. In terms of integration, officers consider that given the backdrop of the existing farm buildings and the means of enclosure provided by existing boundaries, that the application site can accommodate a dwelling as conditioned. In terms of design, officers are satisfied that design and external appearance and ancillary works can be fully assessed at reserved matter stage. Officers consider that a dwelling on the application site would not be unduly prominent or enroll rural character as it clusters with the existing group of farm buildings. In terms of access and parking, DFI roads have been consulted and raised no objections. The only residential property in proximity of the site is the applicant's farm building, and officers are satisfied there will be no impact on residential amenity. A section of the site is within a potential flood pondage area, but there's enough space beyond this area to locate a dwelling and any ancillary works. There have been no third-party objections, and all consultees are favourable, so approval is recommended subject to conditions as set out in the report. If we can just go through the PowerPoint. Next slide, please. You can see this, the site just annotated in blue, just outside Warrenstown. Next slide, please. You can just make out our site there, annotated in red, and the existing farm buildings to the rear. So the blue arrow annotates the site, and you can see the existing farm buildings and associated dwelling immediately to the rear of the site. This was an indicative site layout submitted with the application for information purposes only. This is an approach from the east, so you can see the existing farm buildings, and the arrow annotates the indicative position of a dwelling with the farm buildings to the rear. Next slide, please. Again, that's just standing at the road frontage, so you can see the position of the site with the blue arrow and the mature boundary on the left-hand side. Next slide, please. Again, just another view of that further along from the road frontage, and again, you can see the farm buildings immediately to the rear. Next slide, please. Again, just a wee bit further back, to give a bit sort of broader context. Again, you can see the application site and the principal farm buildings immediately to the rear of the application site. Thank you.
Thank you, Liam. Any questions on this one, members? Not seeing any lights on or hands up. No queries. We'll move into the debate stage. Any views on this one, members? Not seeing any lights on. Okay, we'll move into the decision phase, members. Any proposals on this one? Councillor Savage.
Thank you, Chair. Look, I'm happy to propose application as outlined in the report.
Councillor Savage proposal. Any seconder? Alderman Wilson.
Yeah, happy to second it. It's a pretty well-worn path in terms of farm buildings and how the process works, and I don't see anything out of the ordinary here, so happy to second.
Thank you, Alderman Wilson. So proposal from Councillor Savage, second by Alderman Wilson to approve the recommendation. Any other proposals, members? No other proposals. We're all agreed in the proposal, members? All agreed. Okay, thank you. Thank you, Liam. Do we need to get Councillor Nicholson back in? Keep him locked out for another wee bit. But he's my vice chair, so I'll have to look after him. We'll just give him a moment. Well, apparently he's on the phone, members, so we'll just play on with Appendix 7 which is application number LA08/2021/0926/F. We'll hand over to Sinead McAvoy, Senior Planning Officer, to present the report and PowerPoint presentation. Sinead.
Sorry, Chair, it's Rushing actually taking this one. I should have told Louise. Apologies.
No worries. Rushing, over to you.
Yes, Chair, thank you. Apologies for that. This application seeks full plan and permission for the erection of 2 buildings 240 metres southeast of Unit 5 Bridgewater Retail Park, Banbridge. The reason the application is being presented to committee tonight is because it's a major application. The building will provide office. The first building 1 will provide offices, and building 2 will provide storage and warehousing, along with the new access, car parking and associated site works. A car park will be provided to the front of Unit 1, creating 36 parking spaces, including 3 disabled spaces across the frontage, with the provision of 4 cycle stands to the front of the building. A 2.4 metre high pallet and mesh fencing is proposed along the perimeter of the site and also internally to divide the offices from the yard. It is proposed to plant 32 semi-mature trees to the front and around the office building. This facility is for Glasnevin contracts who are seeking to relocate their offices from Glasdrumman, County Down, to this location. The applicant estimates that the proposed development will create over 30 full-time employees and will represent a 1.25 million investment in the Banbridge area. This represents a material consideration in the assessment of the application, and therefore officers are giving weight to the matter but not determining weight. The site is located outside the town centre boundary of Banbridge, within the settlement limit on land which is zoned for mixed use, zoning BE 36. The Banbridge New and Mourne area plan, zoning BE 36, states that mixed use zonings are those zonings which can accommodate a variety of uses, which may include light industrial class B2, general industrial class B3, business class B1, storage and distribution class B4, dwelling houses class C1, community and cultural uses class D1, and leisure class D2. Where certain uses are inappropriate, these are set out in the key site requirements. It therefore follows that, subject to any material considerations that outweigh the presumption, the principle to develop the area of the site for class B1 and class B4 is considered acceptable. The buildings are within the confines of the site within the existing business park, with proposed palisade mesh fence and boundary treatment around the periphery of the site. Furthermore, the applicant proposes soft landscaping by way of semi-mature trees to the front and sides of the office building, as well as the addition of trees to the front, which helps soften the hard standing areas. Officers are therefore of the opinion that the proposed buildings and associated yard areas will not have an unacceptable visual impact and will visually integrate into the immediate area. The site is located within the confines of the Outlets Business Park. The proposed B1 and B4 uses are compatible with the existing industrial employment uses, which consist of EOS IT solutions to the west and retail development to the southwest. Set against the foregoing land use context, officers are content the proposal is compatible with the context of the surrounding area. The site is located approximately 240 metres from the nearest residential sensitive receptors at Banview Court. Following consideration with the Council's Environmental Health Department, officers are satisfied that given the layout, construction type and separation distances involved in the construction and operation phase of the development, combined with the planning conditions imposed, it's not expected to give rise to any unacceptable adverse impact to the amenity of residential properties, and as such, the proposal complies with the SPPS and Annex A. The proposal seeks to provide access via the internal roadway within the Boulevard Business Park, with the addition of 36 car parking spaces and 2 commercial car parking spaces and 4 cycle parking spaces. When set against the parking standards, this is considered acceptable. Officers in consultation with DFI Roads are content with the proposal from a road safety aspect. Following consultation with the Rivers Agency, officers are satisfied that the proposed development will not raise any detrimental adverse impacts upon drainage or flood risk matters. An assessment of the suitability of habitats and features within the entire site and wider area for potential by a range of protected species, including bats, breeding birds, badger and smooth newt, were all undertaken. No evidence of otter activity or bat activity was identified within the survey. No areas of standing water or suitable newt habitat were identified within the survey site. The development will not involve the removal of any hedgerow, vegetation or semi-mature trees. Therefore, the potential impact on foraging and commuting bats was assessed as low. The scrub vegetation within the site would offer nesting opportunities for a variety of species of birds. Therefore, in order to avoid potential offences through killing or injury of nesting birds and or their young, any necessary clearance of vegetation shall be undertaken outside the bird nesting season, which runs from 1st of March to the 31st inclusive. Officers following consultation with NED are content that the proposal is not likely to harm a European species or national protected species in accordance with the SPPS and the policies in PPS2. There have been no third-party objections to this proposal. Having regard to the above, and after undertaking a policy assessment and planning balancing exercise, officers are of the opinion that the proposed development complies with the area plan, the SPPS and all other relevant planning policies. On this basis and subject to the conditions attached, it is recommended that planning permission be granted. And I'll just take you through the slides. Okay, next slide, please. And again, you can just see the location of the site within the general area. The red arrow just gives you an indication of whereabouts it is. This is an aerial view of the site, and you can see the outlet there and the existing Tesco, and our application site is the site outlined in red. And again, this is just the site location plan. You can see the site outlined in red again, and obviously the access to the road outlined in red as well. This is the proposed layout of the development. That's the warehouse building along the western boundary of the site, and then the office building which fronts on to Caskham Avenue. This is the proposed elevations and floor plans of the office building, and the proposed elevations and floor plans of the storage warehouse building. And this is a view of the site. This is approaching from the northwest along the Caskham Avenue. You can see the red arrow just allocates where the site is. This is at the entrance of the site. So this land has all been regraded and has grassed over, and the species of grass is considered to be quite poor. And this is from the rear of the site, facing southwest, looking back towards the Boulevard Retail Park. And that concludes the presentation. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Roisin, for that report and presentation. Okay, members, any questions or queries on this one? Seeing any lights on or hands up? Any questions, or we'll move into the debate stage? Okay, members, we'll move into the debate stage. Any views on this one? I suppose myself would say it is a positive application that a business is moving from their current location to Banbridge because of the additional advantages of that, and it shows definitely that Banbridge is open for business. So I'd be inclined to approve the recommendation. Any other views on this one? Alderman Wilson?
Yeah, I would echo what you said. It's encouraging, and reading the policy points, it seems to fit perfectly within it. So I would be of the same vein.
Thank you, Alderman Wilson. Any more views before we move into the proposal stage? Or okay, members, we'll just move into that decision phase. Any proposals on the floor, members? Councillor Wilson.
Thank you, Chair. I'm happy to propose accordingly with the recommendation. I have to echo your sentiment. It's good that we're getting that sort of investment into the Banbridge and into the borough generally. So it's most welcome. So I am happy to propose accordingly.
Thank you, Councillor Wilson. Any seconder for that proposal, members? Councillor Savage.
Thank you, Chair. Look, I'm happy to propose Councillor Wilson's, our second Councillor Wilson's proposal there, Chair, and would concur with the comments he's both made. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Savage. So a proposal from Councillor Wilson, seconded by Councillor Savage to approve the recommendation. Any other proposals? That's any lights on our hands up. So we all agreed with that one, members? Okay, we're all agreed. Thank you, Roisin, for taking us through that one. Okay, members, we're flying through them here. Appendix number 8, application number 808/2021/1657. We're going with Sinead this time. Yes, indeed we are. Okay, Sinead, over to you.
Thank you, Chair. The reason this application is before the Planning and Regulatory Services Committee is because it relates to a major application. The application seeks advertising consent in relation to the approved Marks and Spencer retail unit as brought to this committee in October 2021. The proposal seeks consent to advertise Marks and Spencer food on the front canopy, the main entrance door, the front facade of the building, 3 number of windows on the frontage and 5 number of trolley bays. The strategic plan policy statement, along with PPS 17, control of outdoor advertisements, provides the relevant policy context for assessing such proposal. Policy AD1 of PPS 17 states that consent for the display of an advertisement will be granted, provided the scheme respects amenity when assessed in the context of the general characteristics of the locality, and does not prejudice public safety. Officers, in consultation with the Environmental Health Department and DFI Roads, are content that the signage fully complies with policy in this regard. On that basis, officers recommend the application be granted consent. Let's take it through the slides just to show you what the content of that advertisements are. And just to refresh your memory where it is. Next slide, please. So it's not far from the one Rushing has took you through there. The last one is actually just to the northwest of it. So that's location site within the general area, again within the outdoor Boulevard Retail Park. Next slide, please. So that's a aerial view of the proposed site, and you can recall Rushing was to the southeast. So it's within the context of the retail development that's approved. So the site location plan, it just shows where the site is in relation to the building and the trolley bays as approved. So that's proposed block plan and location of the signage within that block plan. So that just shows the proposed signage. So it's familiar throughout Northern Ireland. So it's Marks and Spencer Food to advertise that's the brand that they're putting in that particular retail unit. And that's just where the proposed signage is in the proposed or improved trolley bays that we approved as part of that application as well. So that's the view of the frontage, and the car parking, as you can see, is well under construction at the present time. And so the advertising will be to the front, the windows along there, and then one projecting one in the front facade, as well as the trolley bays that are under construction at the present time. Thank you, members.
Okay, thank you, Sinead. Any questions, members, on this one? Not seeing any lights on or hands up, members. Moving to the debate stage. Any views on this one, members? Alderman Wilson.
No, I suppose it's another good sign in terms of investment in Banbridge, and in particular the retail parks. So that's encouraging from that aspect economically. So given what has been put before us, I would be moving with contentment towards a recommendation of approval.
Thank you, Alderman Wilson. Any other views, members, before we move into the decision phase? Councillor Nixon.
Yeah, Chair, I think I remember this original application coming through the committee, and I suppose it's like all these types of businesses, they need signage, and that's what this application is. It's a signage of a previous approval. So I think it would be churlish if we didn't support this application. So it's pretty much a slam dunk. Sure, there you go. Thanks.
Yeah, all signs are pointing towards an approval on this one. Any other views, members? Okay, we'll move into the decision phase. Any proposals on the floor, members? Councillor Nixon.
Happy to accept recommendation, Chair.
Okay, proposed by Councillor Nicholson, seconded by Alderman Wilson. All agreed, members? Any other proposals? No other proposals. Okay, so we're all agreed on that one. Thank you, Sinead. Okay, members, on to Appendix 9, application number 808/2021/1333. Hand over to Liam McCrum, Senior Planning Officer, to present the report and PowerPoint presentation. Over to you, Liam.
Thank you, Chair. This application seeks full planning permission for the refurbishment and upgrade of the existing play park in Craigavon. Craigavon Park consists of a number of components. The car park, pavilion, football pitch, play areas, pond and wider parkland and public walkways. This application site comprises only of the existing play areas within Craigavon Park. Currently, the access road, car park, pavilion and football pitch are located within the settlement limit. The existing play areas, pond and parkland are located in the open countryside. The application is submitted involves the installation of 27 pieces of play equipment. It is also proposed to install litter bins, seating and picnic tables, existing fencing to be removed and replaced by grass embankments. As the proposed development is located in the countryside and no specific policies in the local area plan, the relevant policy context is provided by CTY 1 of PPS 21, and that refers to PPS 8 for acceptable uses under policy OS 3. Officers as set out in the body of the report are content that all the criteria listed in Policy OS 3 have been fulfilled. Policy OS 1 of PPS 8 also states that development will not be permitted or will result in the loss of open space. In this instance, the existing site is presently a children's play area, so the use will remain the same. So in this instance, the principle of development is found to be acceptable and that the proposal is compliant with the SPPS, Policy CTY 1 of PPS 21 and all the policies relevant in PPS 8. In terms of design, layout and impact and timescape, officers consider that the modernisation of the park through the provision of new equipment will result in the enhancement of the play park facility and Scarborough Park in overall terms. The proposal will not adversely impact on visual amenity nor detract from the character of the area, as the proposed development is more visually pleasing than the existing play park. In terms of access and parking, officers in consultation with DFI Roads are of the opinion that a considerable number of users will be local residents who will access the park on foot. Notwithstanding this, officers consider the existing provision of car parking available that presently serves the existing play park is sufficient to accommodate the proposed refurbishment works proposed in this application. In terms of impact on residential amenity, the closest residential dwelling is approximately 110 metres away in Moody Park. Officers in consultation with the Environmental Health Department of the Council are of the opinion that the proposal will not have an unacceptable impact on the amenities of people living adjacent, particularly as the area is already utilised as a children's play area. In terms of flood risk, a small portion of the site is located within an area of potential flood plungage. Officers in consultation with Rivers Agency are of the opinion that a drainage assessment is not required to be submitted, having regard to PPS 15, Policy FLD 3, in that it will remain the developer's responsibility to assess and manage any potential flood risk and drainage impacts. In terms of natural heritage considerations, the proposed play park is located adjacent to the Scarborough Pond site, which is a local site of local nature conservation importance. Policy CVN1 states the planning permission will not be granted to development that would be liable to have an adverse impact on nature conservation interests of a designated site. Officers have considered the biodiversity checklist that was submitted with the application and the ecological statement in the context of Planning Policy Statement 2 and are content that proposals are not likely to result in any unacceptable adverse impact or damage to any known priority habitats or species by law. There have been no third-party objections and all consultees are favourable, so approval is recommended subject to the suggested conditions. And if we can just go through the report, or the PowerPoint, sorry. Slide, please. Yeah, so you're well aware of the Scarborough and the location of the site within the general area. There's an aerial view of the site. You'll see the football pitch to the left-hand side, the car park pavilion just below it, and our site is just the small sort of red patch you can see on the aerial photograph. There's maybe a next slide, please. Yeah, there's a sort of blown up version of it there. So the existing play park is the sort of red patches you can see with the sort of red areas of soft underlay. Next slide, please. So that's our site location plan. You can see the access road onto Leganelly Road. It comes up and the car park is just below the football pitch. And there's the access walkway that runs up to where the play park is positioned behind the pond. So that's our existing site layout plan. And this is the proposed site layout plan. So that's the existing car park. That's the pedestrian access as you walk up to the play park position as it currently sits. So that's a view into the existing play park. If you have some of the existing equipment, you can see it's become largely dilapidated. Next slide. If you have some of the other equipment there, the swings, and some of the older equipment still in situ. And again, the tower block there as well, existing equipment. This is some of the samples of the equipment that is proposed. Again, there's 27 pieces of those, and I didn't want to go through them all, but give you a flavour of what has been proposed. Fairly standard across all the play parks that have been in the play park strategy. Thank you.
Thank you, Liam. Okay, members, any questions or queries on this one? Councillor Nicholson.
Yeah, thanks, Chair, and thanks, Liam, for your presentation. And I suppose it's a question we do ask just to make sure, and most of these that come forward is there obviously equipment within that, and you did sort of outline it for all abilities, and it's just what sort of what is there in. I know it's part of our play strategy, but just I think it's worth sort of outlining what there is for all abilities. So thank you. Sure.
Thank you, Councillor Nicholson. Liam?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Yeah, I mean, there's the 27 pieces of equipment are actually listed in the report. So under number 2 there, you will have a wheelchair accessible pod swing, an inclusive wheelchair roundabout. You will have accessible spring rocker, 2 number wheelchair accessible trampolines. So there is quite a variety there.
Thank you, Liam. And certainly we do need to make sure play parks are accessible to all as far as possible. Councillor McLean.
Thank you, Chair, and thanks, Liam, for the report. Liam, just a question on the parking facilities for vehicles, people with disabilities. Is there adequate spaces for vehicles or people with disabilities? And I'm just in referring to Oxford Island there. It's opening very soon, and the spaces with the immediate vicinity of the play park is allocated for people with disability. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor McLean. Liam?
No, in this one, there is actually a pedestrian walkway, which was sort of shown in one of the PowerPoints there. So the actual car park is situated approximately 70 metres from the existing play park. This is just a refurbishment of that play park, but there are identified disabled parking spaces in the existing car park that serves the facility.
Thank you, Liam. Okay. Any other queries, members? Let's see any hands up. We'll move into the debate stage. Okay, members, we'll move into the debate stage. Any views on this one? Alderman Barr on Zoom.
Thanks, Chair. No, just sort of it's good to see Discover being updated, and let's hope to see more areas get updated as well in line with our play strategy. Thank you.
Thank you, Alderman Barr, and certainly looking at some of the photos, some of the current equipment looks a bit tired, and certainly good to see that getting a full new replacement in there. Any other views on this one, members, before we move into the decision phase? That's any lights on or hands up. So we move into that decision phase, members. Any proposals on this one? All the lights going on. Councillor Wilson, you think you're in first?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Happy to propose recommendations. As you quite rightly said, you see some of the pictures of the equipment, and that they're saying they're tired is putting it mildly. This park has been crying out for an upgrade for a number of years. It's a very busy play park. It is used by the Scarborough residents, and this investment is most welcome. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Wilson, for that proposal. And I think, well, the next person in was Councillor Nicholson. I think you've narrowly beat out Alderman Barr. Councillor Nicholson.
Thanks, Chair. I can't help but smile a little bit, Alderman Barr, but there you go. No, look, happy to second. It's great to see, when we became the ABC Council, it was one of the big first strategies we put into place. And it's great to see all areas getting, improved play parks. And I hope everybody enjoys them all. So I'm happy to second this recommendation, Chair. Thank you.
Oh, okay, members. So proposal by Councillor Wilson, second by Councillor Nicholson to approve the recommendation. Any other proposals, members? No, all agreed, members. Proposal to approve. Okay, we're all agreed on that one. Thank you, Liam. Okay, members, we're on to Appendix 9 or Appendix 10, application number 808/2021/1572, and it's a discharge of condition. I'll hand over to Sinead to talk us through the report. Alderman Anderson will bring you in.
Thank you, Chair. Just to record a non-pecuniary interest in The next three applications, 10, 11 and 12, they all relate to the Game of Thrones. And then as I was part of a committee some time ago, we received a presentation on the Game of Thrones. So I'd be having an open mind in this and say I'm happy enough to sit in the meeting. Thank you.
Thank you, Alderman Wilson. We'll record that against number 11 and 12 as well. Okay, Councillor Nicholson.
I think there's quite a few of us, Chair, will have to declare an interest because I think some of us got a tour of facility quite recently as well as presentation. So again, I declare that and I sitting here with an open mind, Chair. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Savage.
I was on that tour as well, Chair. There's plenty of people around the room. I know. Look, Chair, it's a discharge of conditions, so I'm happy to sit in with an open mind, as previous members have stated as well.
We'll record that for you, Councillor Savage. Are you the same, Councillor Macklin, and are you the same, Councillor Wilson? Okay, we'll just note all those, but everyone's keeping an open mind. Well, I wasn't on the tour, I was in work, so unfortunately I missed out, but we're handing over to Sinead who talked us through it.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, as the members state, these next three applications relate to the Game of Thrones application that was previously approved. The first application, 2021-1572, relates to an application for discharge of condition 27 relating to that approval. And the reason these are all before the Planning and Regulatory Service Committee is because they related to a major application. And one of the conditions attached was condition 27, which relates to the submission of the travel plan to encourage those employed at the development to use more sustainable modes of getting to their place of work rather than the car. A number of measures are outlined as detailed in the report, including how to encourage walking, cycling, use of public transport and car sharing, and how the coordinator will seek to deliver these. As this condition also requires annual monitoring, also proposed partially discharging the condition at this time only, as the first part of the condition, i.e. the submission of the travel plan, has been submitted. In light of the above and in consultation with the AFI roads, officers would be content to partially discharge this condition.
Okay, members, again, there's no PowerPoint presentation. Any questions or queries for Sinead on this? And there's a discharge of a condition. Not seeing any lights on. Okay, so move into the debate stage. Any views on this one, members? Okay, not seeing any views. Okay, we'll move into the decision phase. Any proposals on this one, members? Alderman Wilson.
Yeah, someone who has never seen an episode of it and not been on the tour, I approach it with an open mind and happy to propose.
Thank you, Alderman Wilson. Councillor McLeod.
Yes, indeed, Chair. A wee bit like my colleague Alderman Wilson in terms of never having seen it, and unfortunately wasn't on the tour either. Very, very happy to second the recommendation. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, that's proposed by Alderman Wilson, second by Councillor McClelland. No proposals, so all agreed on that one, members? Okay, we're all agreed. So that's 10. We're staying with Sinead for Appendix 11. Now discharge condition LOH/2021/1573. Sinead.
Yes, thank you, Chair. And again, this relates to the same site as the previous application, and it relates to condition number 29, which required the submission of a local education strategy. Policy required the proposal illustrated how it could have sustainable benefits to the locality. And the strategy as submitted sets out how it can create and maintain good relations with the local regional college, which has a distinctly digital and creative arts focus within their new campus, and it is in close proximity to the site. SRC and Inamil Studios have set out how they intend to work together and provide students with experience that this industry can provide. Authors have considered this information and are content that condition number 9 can be discharged at this time.
Okay, members, and again, there's no PowerPoint presentation on this one. And again, there's a discharge of condition. Any questions or queries for Sinead? Is there any lights on or hands up? So we'll move into the debate stage. Any views on this one, members? Is there any hands up or lights on? So we'll move into decision phase. Any proposals on this one, members? Councillor Nicholson.
Thanks, Chair. And I think that anybody who's on the tour, you can see the benefits that this is going to be to the college, and especially those subjects that they're studying in relation to filmmaking. So I, as a massive fan, Chair, who's actually watched every episode of Game of Thrones and was on the tour with an open mind, I propose to accept the recommendation.
Thank you, Councillor Nicholson. Any seconders for that? Councillor Toman. So proposed by Councillor Nicholson, second by Councillor Toman to approve. No proposals. That's any lights on. So all agreed, members? Okay, so we're staying with Sinead again. No discharge condition. Appendix 12, which is application number LA08/2021/1574. Sinead.
Yes, thank you, Chair. This application relates to a discharge of condition at the Park and Ride site, which is connected to the Game of Thrones development. Condition 5 relates to one aspect of the service management plan, which sets out how the applicant is to manage and monitor the car parking area as approved as part of the Game of Thrones development. Uniform staff will be employed to manage the car park to ensure all visitors arrive and leave the car park within their allocated time slot only. As this condition also requires that these measures are monitored annually, officers can only partially discharge the condition at this time. Based on the information submitted and in consultation with the EFI Roads, officers are content that this can be partially discharged.
Thank you, Sinead. And again, there's no PowerPoint presentation for this one. Any questions, members? It's only seeing any lights on, so we'll move into the debate stage. Any views on this one, members? Not seeing any lights on, so we'll move into the decision phase. Any proposals on this one, members? Councillor McLean.
Happy to propose the recommendation. Sure, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor McLean. Any seconders for that? Councillor McClellan. So proposed by Councillor McLean, second by Councillor McClellan. Any other proposals, members? No. So members all agreed on that proposal? Okay, so that's agreed. And thank you, Sinead, for taking us through those last three. Okay, members, it's not even 6 o'clock and we're finished already, so an early night for us. It's up to myself to thank Strategic Director Olga, Head Departments Damien and Tom, Legal Advisor Anne, all of our planning officers who are attending in the chamber and on Zoom, our Democratic Services team, our IT team, as well as yourselves, members, for the smooth run of this meeting. So, good night, either way. Okay, could we end the